Okay, so you've made it to the last video here in this practice worksheet, kind of solutions overview. This one, it's all about finding the minimum value in the array that's already been populated into memory. Okay, so kind of a basic idea, right? That it probably makes perfect sense that if you looked at any array in memory and you said that you're just trying to find whatever is the minimum value and print it out. Okay, so that's what we're working with here. That's what we want to kind of deal with. The assumptions below, kind of some hints and everything, most of which you really kind of already know, having kind of worked through some of these problems already. So let's kind of just take it from there and basically figure out how we're going to go ahead and find the minimum value of an array. A little bit of a side note here, this question 3 was actually a question that was on a previous semester exam. So you can kind of give an idea of what types of questions could potentially look like, and how you're doing and how you're kind of understanding some of the work that we've been doing thus far in the class. So, all right, let's jump in. Let's take a look. How to find the minimum. Let's skip over to question 3 here. And first of all, if you're unsure of, for any reason, how to find the minimum value of in an array in C or Java or whatever language you're familiar with, I would start there. Do it in another language, come back to assembly once you are 100% sure on the logic, okay? Because if you can't do it in Java or C, you're not going to be able to do it in assembly. It's only getting harder, right? So the first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to reset, because I'm working off the same program for all 3 questions, kind of keep building on each other. And I'm just going to set T0 to the base address here. I'm sorry, T1 to the base address. Okay, this way I can continue to increment T1, keep using that as what is basically what points to every single index in the array that we're going to iterate through, and not have to change the GP, the global pointer. It's just best to leave that alone so you can always go back to it if you need to. And we're going to set T8, we're going to use that to be storing our kind of current minimum. All right, and I'm going to set it to something very large at first, such that when we find something smaller than that, that will become the current minimum. All right. Other ways to do this, the slightly more kind of clean way of doing it is to set that value to the array at index 0, but it starts to turn into more lines of code, and best to kind of keep it simple for this example. All right, so basically we have the loop here is really a for loop, iterates 10 times. We've seen that a number of times already in the previous questions. Okay, the key thing here is that we are going to, we have to load, we really got to get A1, right? So we got to go to memory, grab, what we're really doing is just like you would in any other language to solve this, is that if imagine this is our values in the array, I'm just making up numbers here. Let's say we have an array of these 5 values, right? We're going to start with T1 pointing here, right? And we're going to say, hey, is that less than our current minimum, which is T8? T8 being our current minimum. It starts off with that being a very large number, okay? And we're going to go and we're going to look at it. We're going to take the value 5 here. Once again, we can't really do anything with that value until we've put it into a register. So we're going to move that into T3, okay? And then we're going to increment T1 so that T1 is going to point here next time we need to reference something, okay? This line down below, our if statement, is basically saying, here I'll store T3, let me, T3 got the value 5. It's basically saying is T3, if it's how you would see it in other languages, is basically would look like this: T3 less than T8. We write it, as you recall, as the negation of that, right? Is T3 greater than or equal to T8? Because in this case, if this condition's true here, we're going to skip to this label, right? But how you would read in other languages, if this is true, you actually go in and run the body of the conditional statement. So, you know, it's important that you kind of remember that. We've seen that a number of times now, that they're the kind of negation. They work the same way as long as you negate the conditional property, right? Because the one in the comments there, if that's true, how you would see it in C or Java is it would enter in the body of the conditional statement and run it. Where in assembly, if the statement's true, we actually skip the body. So you need to kind of swap the logic around so it works the same way. The end result is we're basically saying if T3 is less than T8, which it is, set T8 equal to T3. So that line would run, and T8 would get the value 5. Okay. All right, we continue to do this, right? We look here, when we run back around, we're going to load T3 is going to get value 3. Okay, 3 is going to be less than 5, so we're going to get rid of 5, and we're going to set that to 3, because it's going to fall into that conditional statement here. And 1 is going to be less, we're going to load 1 into T3, we're going to check, is 1 less than 3? It is, so we're going to have 1 up there, right? And we're going to continue looping through, we're going to get to 2, right? Now 2 is not less than 1, so the 1 will stay intact, right? We get to 6. Right, 6 is not less than 1, so the 1 will stay intact. Okay, and the end result is here's just printing a string. T8 has our minimum value. Right, we use system call 1, which is our one that is for printing an integer, and we're going to go ahead and print that value of T8 to the screen so that we print it, and as we saw before, that should contain our minimum value. Okay, I think if you got the other questions 1 and 2 and you really understand them, this one becomes quite simple by comparison. So we can go ahead and we can run it just to test things out. This is containing the solutions to questions 1, 2, and 3. So it's got a little bit of the swap logic in there. I'm just going to enter a whole bunch of numbers. We'll throw 0 in there, which will be our minimum. Okay, and this is for the array index for what we want to swap. I'm just going to swap indexes 1 and 2. It won't affect the minimum at all. Okay, and we can see that the minimum value is indeed 0, just as we would expect. Okay, hope that made sense to you. Once again, please seek help. If you're going back through these videos, if you're listening multiple times, if you're not understanding anything, come ask us, right? We want to help you. Better to get the questions now and clarify them than after the exam where you've already kind of missed the opportunity of getting it. So ask questions, ask them sooner rather than later, and hope you enjoyed watching these videos. Talk to you soon.